Did you make a sandwich at the same time?
No. I made a killer mac and cheese last night, though.
Well, I was worried that you were making a killer mac and cheese right now. You can tell us.
Sorry, I would not disrespect our guest that way.
Our guest. Well,
I would not disrespect them that way.
You're texting me. You can't text me and I can't look at this at the same time. I think that's podcaster rule.
Oh.
Number 1. You can't podcast.
No.
And text. It's not fair. It's not fair. Now you're drinking water again. Tell you, I couldn't get a better co-host.
It's a must. Because how can we communicate with each other when we're in different cities and like tell secrets?
Well, I think the thing is that we're tonight's show, and to everyone that's watching tonight,
this isn't a podcast.
It's not a podcast. It's late night restaurant show. We are overseas today in Australia. That's why we have the Australian logo. And if you notice, we changed our logo to the Australian flag. Yeah, and we've got an amazing gentleman.
Multiple C's to get there. Yeah.
Not if you go the back. Not if you go the back way. Not if you go the back way. You're going the other way.
Oh yeah, through the Pacific way. You're right. Yeah, I'm thinking of going because you're
going the long way. You would go that way, wouldn't you?
I think it's like a 14-hour flight from Vancouver. I'll have to ask him. Or do you have to fly to LA or something? But doesn't matter. We got him live here.
It's probably a direct flight to Australia.
So cool.
But we have him live here. He's awesome. Have you finished off your sapsuckers?
No, I still have one or two. I could use some more.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank them again for all the products they sent us. And it's been awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. You know, I'm using this new mic right now because I noticed I was listening to our shows. I don't know if you listen to our shows, but I was spitting into the mic too much.
Oh, so you need one of those spit guards.
I have a spit guard. I don't like it.
Get a bigger one.
It looks like I'm like what is it, Willie Nelson with something in front of me? I don't want that.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, we want to see your pretty face, Jay.
I have do you have the thing moved all the way to the one side that makes your face look like you're 12 years old?
Oh, you know what? I can do that because I'm on my.
You've already got it maxed out. Don't go the other way.
High def, and I gotta touch up my. Yeah, okay, there we go. How young do you want me to look today?
Anyways, we got a great guest on tonight. For everyone else that's going to be watching the show tonight on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, we are live tonight. We record live to our shows. Also, it's not a podcast, but you can find us with other podcasts up on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, Audible, YouTube. Does anyone go to those other ones?
Oh, yeah, for sure. 100%.
I don't know. I know everyone goes to YouTube. I know that's a hot place, but
yeah.
Anyways, we have a great guest tonight, and thanks to Sapsucker and all the other different companies out there. Do you notice how, Dominic, we do a pod blast? I invented a new terminology called a pod blast. I don't even get that.
I didn't know that was just invented. No, I don't understand. We heard of blasting other stuff, but not heard of a pod blast.
And you would say that. And you would say that. You would say that. So what it is that when we release a show, I actually put it into an email thing where it goes out and it blasts everyone about our new shows. And we have all our guests on there.
Oh, cool.
And all the different things. So it goes out to almost 4,200 people to their inboxes every week, a couple times a week. And anyways, we have tons of different friends. I call it friends of the show. List of them. You're in there, just so you know, and you get a special spot too. Did you know that?
Yeah, I was going to say, should the co-host get that email?
Yes, the co-host actually should subscribe to it. Oh, Jesus. Anyways.
But I ain't automatically subscribed for being on here. What kind of privileges do I get for being on this show, Jay?
Oh, jeez.
What do they?
Oh.
I think it was Amex. Amex used to say membership has its privileges, right?
Yeah, well, I think
We're no way affiliated with Amex, just so you know.
Yeah, no, we're not. We're not affiliated with them, but you should be following us if you're not. But anyways, we got a great show. A great show. It's not a podcast. Don't think it's a podcast. And drink Sapsucker. If you don't drink Sapsucker, then there's not another soda out there.
Nothing.
Soda. Do you call it soda? Do you remember that song, Kim Mitchell? Go for a soda?
Might as well go for soda, yeah.
Yeah, it's 1980.
Yeah, I remember that song.
Yeah.
Wow.
You and your mullet. You and your mullet in your Camaro. Your mullet. I don't think you were a Camaro guy. I think you were more of a Pinto guy. Gremlin? You had a Gremlin, didn't you?
No, I didn't have a Gremlin. I had
you had a Gremlin.
Station wagon. A delivery van. I had a Dodge Caravan.
No. Anyways,
my friend, yeah, let's go. Let's
go. You lost me at station wagon. There you go. Welcome, Jewels.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Jewels.
Did you have a station wagon, Jewels, growing up?
I did not have a station wagon. I did drive one for work at one point, and it was the most jalopy of a car, and would pretty much break down every time I got into it. So yeah, I've had a van experience a couple of times.
Is a station wagon the same as a van in Australia?
I'm not sure that your descriptors. So no, a station wagon's kind of long and skiddy with a car with a big boot.
Big boot.
Big boot.
That'd be fun, yeah.
Anyways, Jewels, thanks again for joining us tonight on the show. It's not a podcast, but we are so excited to have you on and want to thank you for your time tonight. And let's talk a little bit more about you. Who are you? Where are you from? All those good things.
I am Storyteller Jewels, or my name is Jewels Nistico, but Storyteller Jewels. I am from Sydney, Australia, and my thing is really, I'm a speaker, author, and a coach or a mentor. And my thing really is about helping businesses just really get out there and tell their story, attract attention, build a brand. Because these days, most businesses start to blend in. Why storytell? Well, every business starts to look and feel a little bit the same, right? And so there's nothing more unique than you as an individual. So being able to get up and actually tell your story immediately puts you, gives you a differentiation. So why not tell your story? Why not get out there and attract some attention? That's really my thing. So how do you get out there, create some attention, create some buzz around you or your business, and attract the audience that makes sense to you?
Does that work for any business, Jewels? Like, is it just for like service businesses? Can it be food service? Can it be a restaurant? Can it be a multi-unit restaurant? Can it be a single restaurant? Can it be a pizza place, a takeout place? Like, who needs that? Like, I think, me and Jay probably think everybody needs it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely out there for anybody to access. I mean, how many bloggers or influencers or Instagram things do you see where somebody is just chopping vegetables, as an example? It's out there, right?
Dominic does that on Sundays.
Right. There's a bunch of it, and it gets attention.
After tending to the goats, yes.
So absolutely, it doesn't matter what business you're in. It doesn't matter whether you're in business at all. If you want to attract any sort of audience, you've got to tell a story. Now, that might be personal stories, but that might be business-related stories. It might be a bit about your craft. It might be about your past. It might be about what you think. It doesn't matter, but you need to be able to tell that story.
So so when we talk about stories, and I think when we're like in the restaurant industry, in the hospitality industry, and we find it's so important to tell stories today in this industry, and we have our storytellers, our mascots, Sean, down in California, that talks about this nonstop, about how important is the storytelling. What's your take on that, Jules, for our industry?
I think as a restaurant industry, absolutely. I think it's super important. And the reason you would want to, again, is to attract the type of people who are going to be interested in what you're doing, right? So you've got so much competition. There is so many people in the industry. Every street corner has a restaurant, has a cafe, has a takeaway, has anything. Food is available everywhere. And so, and so the audience is always looking for something, right? They're not just, and it's usually an experience. So food is just one part of the equation, I believe. So the food's got to be great. It's got to be good. It's got to be tasty. It's got to fit within, a genre or a price point, and all of those things are really important. But without an experience wrapped around it, it's just a commodity. Right?
Yeah,
if it's a burger, you can get a burger in Burger A and Burger B, and they're both going to be great burgers. But if you go to somewhere and you can, you walk in and there's a beautiful, maybe it's a wood-fired place where the meat is cooked on a wood fire oven, and it's open and visible. That's storytelling, right? Being able to see what's going on, being able to see behind the curtains. I think gone are the days to some degree where the kitchen is behind closed doors. More and more are coming forward, and that's part of that experience, right? That too is storytelling. So it's visual storytelling, it's vocal storytelling, it's storytelling about your ingredients from the chef. What are you using? Why are you using that particular ingredient? Where it comes from? Is it sustainable? Is it ethical? All of those things make up the experience of what you are trying to achieve, which is provide great food, provide great service, and provide a good experience.
When
there's the eyes to the roof.
Well, yeah. When you say that, what's the process? What's like for any business? Yeah, you say get out there and start. I think we were talking earlier. You said that the starting is you just got to start where you are. It's like start right now, but start for God's sakes, because you're wasting time, right? There's obviously more to it than that. And eventually you might find your own way. We joked about we need coaches. Jay needs a coach. I need a coach. We need somebody to guide us. We think we're doing a great job, but we're not savvy enough to maybe step back and look at ourselves and critique ourselves to say, hey, we could probably do a better job here, or we should incorporate some of this to enhance the story. And we're really trying to tell the stories of our industry to get that out. So we would definitely benefit from having some of your insight. But for every other restaurant, how do they start? What do they do? What's the process of maybe working with you?
Right. So lots
of questions in there. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
He looked to the ceiling. That's why.
Hey, no, look. Starting is usually the most difficult place, right? People are a little bit afraid of the process. People are a little bit afraid of getting out there, especially if it's not, they're not naturally sort of outgoing type people. And I'm not. I'm very much an introvert, but got myself into this space somehow. But so firstly, it is a decision, and you need to sort of embrace it. So once you make a decision, yes, I'm going to do this, you really need to go in a little bit hard. And when I say go in a little bit hard, I don't mean you've got to suddenly, do 400 TikToks a day and have a YouTube channel and all these kinds of things. Like, right off the bat. It is really a process of growth. And so you should start off quite simply, but go in with your, ready to begin, right? So choose a channel. My suggestion is always choose a channel. There's two parts. Choose a channel that you're comfortable with, but also that you believe your audience might be a part of. So if that's Instagram, if that's YouTube, if that's LinkedIn, whatever the platform that makes most sense, both from your perspective, something you might be a little bit comfortable with, but also from the audience perspective. So there's got to be a match there. So go where the audience is one of those things. Start simply, but don't try and overwhelm yourself. So set a bit of a schedule, right? So in this day and age, content needs to be pretty prolific, but it's really hard to do right off the bat, right? It's impossible for most people to say, yeah, I'm going to do 10 posts a day, right? And so start light, even if that's one a week, one every few days, something that you're able to commit to, and diarize it. Make sure it's actually in your diary and it's something that you're going to commit to. It's like eating. You know you're going to do it at a certain time of day. Then make this one of those things that you're going to commit to on a regular basis, whatever that frequency is, with the idea in the back of your head that you're going to increase this frequency, but over time. So get started, pick a platform that you are comfortable with, and then set a frequency, because consistency is one of those things that will let you down very quickly. If you're not visible and available on a regular basis, you just won't get seen. You won't get remembered. You can't just appear randomly every now and again. It really needs to be something people start to get, familiar with, that you are there. I'm starting to see you, because people don't necessarily react on your very first thing you say, right? If you say, hey, if you got online and say, hey, come to my restaurant, I'm doing this deal, or, we've put together this something or other, then the expectation can't be that it's all of a sudden going to drive, 3,000 people into your restaurant over the next couple of weeks. It just doesn't happen, right? So familiarity is a two-way street. You've got to get familiar with your platforms and your audience, but the audience themselves need to get familiar with you. So it's important that they get a sense of who you are. And that's why storytelling is really kind of cool, because when you start to do it from the heart and start to do it authentically, at first it's going to feel very robotic, right? You're going to feel like you're a bit stilted, and maybe even you're going to read off something and it's going to feel really awkward.
Dominic started our show like that.
Right. It's going to, let's face it, the first many are going to suck. But that's okay.
Or 1,200 later.
Ours was an instant hit.
Ours was, I don't know. Talking about you.
I guess we were.
I don't know about you.
About myself, right? I was crap. You need to. You've got to get those. A songwriter, as a good example, they'll tell you that they'll write 100 songs before one actually feels like there is any good, right? So you've got to go through the garbage to get to the gold.
Well, here's my theory on the two, Jewels, and I've said this to Dominic's heard this a few times, is one of the things that I learned in university many, many years ago is all the great art was not created with intent. It was created because they were playing around and they were working through what they were trying to get to. And any art in any gallery in any part of the world, Australia, Canada, United States, was not created because they said, I'm going to make a masterpiece. It was because they were working towards what their goal was or what they were trying to do. And a lot of it came from playing. One of the greatest artists in the world was Picasso, and Picasso was known for messing around, playing around all the time. Yeah. And that was the case. And I think a lot of the times in business, we're so serious, or we believe that the content that we produce, especially on social, has to be perfect, or you're going to have every post has to be a home run. It is not the case, and I tell you, me and Dominic know that for sure.
I think the nice thing about getting comfortable, as soon as you get to that mindset, what Jay just talked about, as soon as you, for me anyway, I think for us, but for me, as soon as we started not worrying about the camera and the mic and all that kind of stuff, and just started speaking from the heart and being just relaxed, it just all got easier because now, I'm just having a conversation with Jewels and Jay, and there could be one person watching or 5,000, and it could be 5 downloads or 500. I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about what's happening now or what I need to get out there. So as soon as and that comes, like you say, with frequency. Mm. I think that's the magic. And to Jay's point, when, for our little show, our best
whoa, not little. Don't make it small.
Yeah, well,
we're number one in Canada. Come on.
Yeah. Well, but for our show, our best stuff is when we're most relaxed and most at ease, and we're playing around. And even with our guests, everybody has the most fun when we're just ourselves and relaxed, right? So I like that you said that.
Yeah, it's super important because you start to look and feel like the person you actually are. Mm-hmm. And when somebody comes into your business or into your world, whether that's a restaurant or any other business, if you're different to what they thought you were, then you've lost them again anyway, right? So if you're inauthentic online and they come and see you in real life and you're a different person, then you've done yourself an injustice because they haven't been attracted to the real you. They've been attracted maybe to this false you. So the more authentic you can be, and that comes, like you say, with frequency. It comes when you relax. It comes when you are, somewhat confident in who you are and what you've got to share. Then all of these things start to fall into place because that's who you are. And particularly anybody who's any form of artist, as you described before, Jay, they are also probably the most passionate people that you will ever meet, right? So in your world, a chef is an incredibly passionate person about the food that they make and what they do and how they do that. And so that part, if you start to bring that out in your stories and what you feel when you actually start to put these things together, the audience will feel that too. And when they start feeling what you feel, that's the attraction part. That's the bit that goes, I want some of what they're having, whatever that is, right?
Yeah. I think to your point, I think a lot of people don't start because they think, well, first there's a fear for whatever, right? But I think they also think, well, nobody wants to hear about this. Mm-hmm. And you said it earlier, there's people cutting onions and carrots and, feeding their fish and playing banjo. There's all I've said this many. I watch stuff about planes. I know nothing about planes, but I'm interested in planes. I want to know about them. I want to know how they work and all that stuff. But there is an audience out there for what you have to say for the people in the food service, and I think especially in food service because we're tied to our food. We're just as a regular consumer, we're passionate. Consumers are passionate about their food. Mm-hmm. They get the restaurant or their food service place or their corner store they go to, they're connected to them because it's almost like it's every part of your day. Even your grocer, right? It's like you have interaction with them. The grocer maybe more often than a restaurant, but restaurants as restaurants make it easier, and even with the challenges of costs and all that stuff, easier for consumers to connect with them. They're going to come more often.
Yep.
And that's why this, storytelling is so important and frequency is super important. But starting at the very least, Jay, you've said it for a long time. Every restaurant needs a podcast. Start telling your story. Your existing customers and the customers that don't know you yet, they want to know about you and what you're doing, and your staff for that matter, right? If you're not worried about content, ask the people that are around you. There's 50. If you got 5 people, there's 5,000 stories there to be told.
There's millions of them, and I think I think, and we've said this 1,000 times on this show: storytelling, podcasting, everything else. The big thing I also want to throw in there is just doing it. And Jules, you kind of mentioned that too. Is just do it. And so many people that we talk to, or they'll do it and they don't really set that commitment level. And I think that's also the big part of the key is if you're going to get it, especially in podcasting, like we get this podcast, was it 95% of podcasts don't make it past the 5th show because it has to be a commitment. And I think it's okay to do 5 and say, it's not my thing, or I'm not going to commit to it. That's fine. But the opportunities are, don't tell me that your business is suffering or you're not having people come or know your brand, or you're paying an arm and a leg in traditional marketing. This stuff is free. Like technically, like it costs a little, but it's minor to what an ad in a newspaper is, or Dominic's home and garden magazine that he puts himself into.
Right.
Right.
And
yeah, and if you have the budget, then hire the coaches, right? Hire the people that can help you get it out there, because they'll push you too, right? And that can look anything like, hey, it's just a simple reminder, and I'm going to help you get started. To there's full meal deals out there that'll help you publish your whole everything. But get out there, because I think it's important. And
on that very point, like you don't even necessarily have to go out and seek a professional. I mean, I'd love people to come and obviously, hire me to help, but that's beside the by. But you guys have done the same thing, right? You've paired up, and by pairing up, there's a couple of things that go on. One is you kind of commit to each other that you're going to do something, right? So, you don't want to let the other person down. That's one thing. But a conversation is actually much more authentic than a single person to a lens. So some of the best podcasts are usually interview style, where there's at least 2 people going on rather than one person to a screen. So when people start, that's another thing that I kind of suggest is try and find a partner in crime where you can actually bounce off each other a little bit. Now that might be
Dominic?
That may be one person who's always on screen and the other person's behind the camera. But the other person, the person behind the camera, A, is there for support, B, can prompt with questions, can make sure things are going well and more authentically by being there and being supportive. Or you can do it the way you guys are doing, where you have both people on screen, you're kind of bouncing off each other, right? So it's easier to answer a question when somebody asks you that. So if you're sitting there, chopping some food as an example, rather than you thinking, what does the audience want to hear? The person behind the camera might say, hey, Jay, what are you cutting up there, and why are you cutting it in that way? And then while they're doing their craft, they might say, well, actually, I'm cutting this, julienne style, because it's going into this, and it's a French style, and we want to make it feel and look a certain way, and we're doing it nice and thin and skinny so that it cooks more evenly and is softer, and all of these things that you take for granted, and that is what you might think is boring. If you're doing 500 carrots in a particular day, that might be boring to you, but somebody watching that and learning that and understanding why it is, sometimes you cut carrots long and thin, and sometimes you cut them in square chunks, and sometimes they're round. Why is that? Why do we make these choices? And that's actually kind of interesting for somebody who's interested in food, right? So as you say, people are passionate about food, whether they're in the industry or not. Like a lot of people like their food, right? They want good food, but they also.
I got to ask you a question. Now this is kind of on topic and kind of to your point of you need, maybe you should have somebody else. And don't take offense to this.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I'm gonna say
I'm already offended, but go on.
You don't say. Are you gonna be? You're gonna be.
Well, that's the answer.
I can't choose whether
Why
I'm going
is
to be offended or not.
If people in Australia listen to this, do they say, "Man, those Canadians have a very cool accent"? I want to know if they say that, because up here, half of our radio. Jay, listen. I'm getting to, hey, do you hire a professional like Jewels to be your co-host to have that?
Well, he's got a great accent. I would in this.
Yeah, well, this is my point. Half of all radio stations in Calgary, anyway, probably in Canada, have a British, Australian, or New Zealand host? Why is that?
So you've picked up on something actually that's quite interesting, because one of the things I talk about is getting attention, right?
Yeah.
So attention is really important, and holding somebody's attention. Now, I always talk about breaking the mold, right? How do you stand out from the crowd? So if you start to look and feel and sound exactly the same as everybody else, then people's minds are kind of wired to start to ignore stuff, particularly if it's too familiar, right? So you want to break pattern, and an accent is actually a way to break pattern in.
Are you
in
serious?
Yeah, absolutely.
Bingo.
Exactly. It's a pattern
totally,
break.
Jay.
So it stands out because it's not the same. You're not hearing the same language.
It's true.
True.
You know what?
So
It's so true. I think so.
So true.
So
Jules,
how can
all the radio stations in Canada just went shit? You found the secret
they let
sauce.
the secret out? No, but how can a restaurant, like I would say in a restaurant, okay, so I've got a small restaurant. I'm going to say bring in your other staff, bring in the people that work for you, and get them to tell their story, because that's going to change it up. One, you can ask the questions. Two, there's going to be something interesting about them. They might get out of their comfort zone. You can't always have it. Like we're lucky we get a guest from Australia. We get a guest from the UK. Like we're lucky in that sense. Jay gets to put the Australian flag in our logo. So, but if you're willing to, you said break the mold. If I can't do it with voice, which radio stations employ, maybe I think that's why. Maybe they're just willing to work for less. I don't know, but I think it's not the norm.
Right. So pattern interrupt is not just visual. Sorry, it's not just voice. Pattern interrupt, right? So when you want to break the mold or interrupt a pattern, it doesn't just have to be, what you say. So it can be a number of things, right? So as a good example, so when I get up on as a speaker at a conference, I always think about what does the audience typically going to look like? What kind of audience are they? So I did one just recently here in Australia. It was a very formal sort of environment, and I knew that most people would either be in a suit or something close to that. So I got up on stage in my green Converse, right? Pattern interrupt. I stood out from the crowd, and even if they don't remember my name, they might go, "Hey, who was that guy that wore the green shoes?"
Jay does that, I think, with his pants.
So you want to do that in your storytelling.
Dominic, you're making fun of my pants.
Right? No, but
I do.
You wear,
so it's professionally pattern interrupt. Was that right, Jules?
Pattern interrupt. Yeah. So when you start to feel and look exactly the same as everybody else, people will start to ignore you because you're boring, right? It becomes boring. So you Dominic find a way to stand out. So Dominic, stands out. You've got to find a way to stand out from the crowd. So it could be anything. It could be the way you film your shows. It could be the way you sound. It could be what you wear. It could be, you might have a gimmicky something or other. So, your Wayne's World hat might be your kind of thing. And that's how you're sort of known or remembered. So there will always be something that might stand out. And that can be just as important, because one of the first thing you're trying to do in any form of storytelling, whether that be on social media, whether that's long form, if that's live, you want to be able to, and initially you must capture their attention. So they must stop whatever they're doing and go, whatever's going on in front of me right now is important enough to either watch, listen, hear, or understand.
Is the pattern interrupt getting harder and harder because our attention span is shorter and shorter?
That's a good question.
Just because 20 years ago,
but I think more things are accepted though in the pattern interrupt.
No, just that. But as more things are accepted, they also become the norm.
Because you have to be louder. Well, you have to be louder and louder.
So
I think that's dangerous, right? That can be dangerous.
getting on any trends too late is pointless, right? So a trend is only usually a trend for a relatively short period of time. So if you can get on a trend early, you might be part of that, that growth. But if you stay there too long, it's going to be, as you say, Dominic, it's going to become the new normal, right? So you don't necessarily have to be an innovator, but you always want to be a little bit on the front foot. And that's why it's kind of nice or kind of cool to have something that is unique to you as well. So whether that's the green shoes on stage or the Wayne's World hat or whatever that might be, something that differentiates you and makes you memorable is kind of useful. But also that can translate into things like the way you film, the way you start, your post or whatever that is. It might be something kind of unique right at the beginning, just to stop them in their tracks. Because we're all guilty of the thumb scrolling, right? So we scroll through social media, and it's the pattern interrupt that makes you stop for. And as you say, Dominic, we've got a very short attention span, so we only stop for a millisecond before deciding whether or not we continue to scroll or whether we stop for a little bit longer. But here's my thing, right, about attention span. When was the last? Well, how long was the last movie or show that you went to see? 90 minutes, 2 hours.
90 minutes an hour, 2 hours.
I don't know. I rented Ghostbusters on the weekend.
It's an hour and a
half.
One?
The new one, I'll have to be honest, I couldn't do the whole thing.
Right.
Why is that? Am I
but if it's maybe it wasn't well.
It was good. It was good.
But attention span is relative to the medium, right? So in a movie sense, 90 minutes is not unusual. And therefore, for you to sit in a movie theater and watch a movie for 90 minutes without feeling like you have to get on your phone is often okay, right? Hopefully you're not on your phone in the movie theater. But in social media, that might be, 5 seconds to 30 seconds. And so you need to be able to capture their attention, but then keep it. So in a movie, there's always another action scene. There's always another something that you didn't expect, around the corner, and something big or banging on the thing, or a really good moment on the screen. In social media, it's much faster than that. You've got, maybe 1 or 2 seconds in between each thing that you've got to provide to keep them staying, to keep them listening, to keep them going. And so really that becomes a trial and error thing, right? You've got to test your material. Like anything.
Well, and I think that the back to your original point, you're only able to test your material and get by doing quantity. You need a lot of it to see what works and what little clips that you and the reality is, Jay does this for us. I haven't seen too many safe check ones, but I think we're supposed to.
Get I think you're snoozing on that one there.
Don't blame
the producer.
I 100% blame the producer. That's what you always do, Jay. No, but like when you have that quantity and all of that material to look at, or have somebody look at it for you, that lets you find those little 1 or 2 little second snippets that are also important in social media. As much as your 1 or 2 minute posts are, the 3 or 4 second ones are also important because that's where you can capture that, that great moment where you cut the steak or somebody bites into it, whatever it might be.
Well, I want to bring it back to the industry because I think we can learn a lot of this for the restaurant industry and how they're promoting or producing products. So they'll get on there, and I say this with the most respect to the industry that I love. I don't see enough of it, first of all. And when I do, it's not storytelling. It's someone with a bloody plate showing me showing me stuff, or it's a picture of the poor waitress or the server holding the dish that doesn't do justice, or it's overhead picture like I care. But back to that white noise, I think the more that you move into this storytelling models for social video, we know video works better. It's an option on your phone. Trust me. You can flick to video and do a video, flip the camera, tell a story, tell us why you made this, tell us why your chef made this. What is the ideas behind it? Get involved, talk to your community, like I see this and we tell this 1,000 times. I swear to God, we've told this 1,000 times, but I still see people out there. And then we say the industry isn't, like we have restaurants closing. We have people not wanting to go. They only go to franchises. They don't go to independents. Well, let's do stuff that other people don't do. Back to what you're saying, Jules. Let's interrupt. Let's disturb. Let's do those interruption patterns. And I think that's important, but we don't do enough of it. We get comfortable. We think people are listening or they see our videos or whatever it is, and they are actually, because I think it's important to create content, but content that actually does something. It creates an action. I think that is even if the action is, geez, I think I'm going to think of that place next time I go for a burger, or it's subconsciously planted inside me. Not because of these posts, but we don't do enough of it. And we do not storytell enough. And I think there are so many good stories out there. Our industry is flooded with stories. And we don't hear it. We don't hear it.
We saw a little bit of a bump, Jay, I think, during COVID, because people said, okay, I got to do something. But that's trailed off. I'm seeing way less of it now. Which makes me sad, because there was a lot of people telling their story because they were desperate. They were going to be closing. They were. So they were telling their closing story, why they're going to be closing, which is, hey, keep telling that story because people want to support you. Not because you're closing, but because of 30 years of good service. There's a lot of story to tell there. Jules, if somebody wanted to contact you, we're not going to ask like direct prices though. Is this an expensive? If we want to hire a pro like yourself to help us get something started, or to talk to us on maybe some ideas, or to talk to us on, hey, here's how you'd start. What's that process look like? Where do they go? What's the, I hope I don't think it's expensive. I know it's not as expensive as people think it is. 30 years ago, anything like this would have been really, really, really expensive. But now, like you said earlier, what's your website? I think is the first one, because we don't know that.
This is like sorry for the longest questions in the world tonight.
So my agency is called the Storyteller Group. So STORYTLR.group is my particular agency that does a lot of this mechanical side of it. So my advice to anybody sort of who's starting out, one is give it a go on your own for a little bit, because understanding the process itself, or just, failing miserably a little bit, a couple of times and falling flat yourself, gives you a little bit of a sense of the bits that you both like and the bits that you hate. So a really good example is some people really like being in front of a camera. They actually don't mind it, but they absolutely detest, the back end part, having to sort of cobble together a video and then maybe having to post it and maybe follow the post for a bit. All of those mechanical things, some people find really challenging and they don't enjoy it. So think about the bits that you like and the bits that you don't like, and then look for somebody who is able to help you out with the things that you're not very good at. So I would always say the owner of the restaurant, the chef, either needs to be in front of the camera or they're actually guiding the camera. In other words, if you've got some great employees, for example, some really great wait staff or sous chefs or people, anybody related to the restaurant, then maybe you're behind the camera and that's the bit you're good at, and ask the questions of the people. And then look for, and if you don't like the editing bit, or you don't understand how to put together a video and do those mechanical bits, then look for an agency that will help you do those things. Now, those costs will vary, local to you, globally, wherever you go. I mean, these things can be done anywhere for sure. So you're not limited by country anymore. You can actually find somebody anywhere in the world to help you with a lot of the mechanical side of things. And so it can be really inexpensive to get, a person to cobble these things together. But the hardest bit usually is that first part, is getting on that video. And I do like video. I'm with you there. I'm a big fan of the written word as well. So I place for blogging and for emails and things like that. So storytelling through those mediums. I'm a big believer in, live kind of storytelling as well. So at conferences or in, at meetings or whatever. So you could say, as a restaurant, for example, you could go and storytell to the local businesses and tell them about how it is, you pull together a menu and cater for large events, right? So you don't have to limit it to just storytelling on a particular medium like, Instagram or whatever, but find the bit that you like and then outsource the rest. That's the short answer to that long-winded.
So it's just so smart, I think, that to reiterate to everybody that you don't have to start big. You just have to start. You just have to start.
You don't have to get an expensive agency to help you with all these things.
No, you don't. You trust me.
Definitely have to get used to the idea of being and I always talk about storytelling as a lifestyle choice. So once you make this decision, this is not, and one thing I hate about the marketing industry in general is that we talk a lot about campaigns where, it'll run for a month or it'll run for 3 months, right? Storytelling in this context, this is a lifestyle choice. You forever. Need to make this decision and do this forever.
Yeah,
okay,
I agree.
so you better get.
There you go, Dominic.
Right,
we're doing this forever.
You're doing it forever, and it might not be in the same format, right? You might, like you said, Jay, you might choose a format, go for a little while, and go, okay, this format's not working for me. I'm going to try something different. But eventually, you'll find something that it does work, and you need to continue the process. It's something you do in, day out. It'll be part of your process. It'll be like, I've got to chop these onions and I've got to do a video, right? It's part of the process. It's part of.
I like what you said earlier. Is like put it in your diary, schedule it, and it's more likely to happen. Set some time aside for it. It's more likely to happen. Make it short so that it actually fits. Don't allow for hours and hours of it. You probably need 5 or 10 minutes a day, and once you get into that, getting that content, and then if you're editing yourself or somebody else is doing it for you, and then engaging your staff, I think it's so important. That I really believe. Like I know everybody I know wants to know about that restaurant. They're curious about it. They're curious about how long they've been there, what they're doing. Well, is the same family running it? Are there kids involved? Like, why did it get sold? Why did they change the menu? Why did they drop the XYZ burger? What happened to it? It's people want to know.
Yeah, the other little handy hint, just on that frequency part, is actually associate it with something that you already do on a frequent basis. So, if chopping onions is your thing, and that happens at 10 a.m. every morning as you're doing the prep, then tie it in with something, right? So go, okay, I'm going to do my video when I do my onion, or I do my onions first, and then I do the video. Nice. Whatever that. Tie it into something that you're already familiar with, that you're doing on a regular, frequent basis, and tie it in with that so that it becomes habitual along with the bit that you're already doing. And so that way you're kind of reminded, triggered to go, I'm chopping onions. Right, I've got to get the video out. And while I'm chopping the onions, I'm thinking about a couple of things. I've got time now. I'm chopping 400 onions. I've got time to think about what I might say on this video. And then as soon as I'm done, I wash my hands, I grab my phone and I do a video. Tie it in with something you're familiar with.
Jules, as we wrap up here, and I just want to thank you. All this information, I wrote so many notes down again. I don't know what this is, Dominic. Every time we have a guest on lately, I'm writing down so many notes.
Well, I think Jay,
there's a lot of gems here.
You booked some excellent guests.
Honestly, first of all, there's two things I want to bring up. I'm going to share a couple things here, Jules, because you made me, before I get into your book, because I do want to ask you about the 6 reasons why you're being ignored in the boardroom. Because I do want to go through it really quick before we wrap up here. But I do want to mention, you also mentioned something here tonight. I think there's an opportunity for restaurateurs. You said buddying up, and I got my buddy here every night. I think restaurants could also, what if there was like a restaurant and you went and found another restaurant and then you did a restaurant versus restaurant podcast? It's not a versus,
Smart.
but you joined it, right? You got
Smart,
two restaurants. You know what
Very
I'm talking
smart.
about? Well, like instead of competing, why don't this restaurant join
Collaborate.
this restaurant and collaborate on a podcast? And then
Absolutely.
you've got two groups doing the show. Maybe you can't do it by yourself, but you can do it if you go to the pizza place across the street, say, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. We'd like to be on my show. We'll do it together. You know, blah, blah, blah. Like you said, it's almost like that's splitting it down to have a buddy to help you, one, hold you accountable on showing up and being a part of the show. But I think it's also that collaboration amongst each other and show that you're in this kind of, you're in the, like you said, you're in the industry together. You're an expert. They're an expert, whatever the case is. I think there's something there on that part.
That's smart. Jay.
The other part,
That's very smart.
yeah, I do know marketing. The other part I want to mention that you first of all, I do love the pattern interruptions because I do that every day. But I also want to make sure that when you talk about pattern interruptions, that it isn't about being goofy or out there, because a lot of people don't understand. When I wear pants that are a different color, it's not because I like wearing pants of a different color. It's to that interruption, but also that attention, everything else. It's strategic. Like, I think a lot of people think sometimes, like when we do our show, we're goofing around and everything else. It's not the fact, but there's a million dry podcasts in the restaurant industry that are same thing over and over again. We decided to make something different, and it works, but you have to be consistent within that, and you have to disrupt. But I tell you, I think a lot of people think sometimes it's goofy or whatever the case is. No, they're strategically planned. Dominic works all night on the content that he talks about.
Goofy is an interesting one. Goofy will only get you so far. You've got to have some substance behind it as well. Right?
You're 100%. I think that's so important, because I have a lot of people sometimes are like, maybe they don't think that we take this stuff serious, but it's because we've done 1,500 shows or whatever the case is, like a bazillion shows. We understand that, but it's the process of thinking of what the end user is going to take out of it, or how do you, like you said earlier, Jules, is how do you grab their attention? How do you hold them for those moments? How do you make them stay for 52 minutes and listen to this whole show and get their attention for that? Like, they don't need to give us that time. So you have to make the content good. And I think a lot of the times we do it for our self purposes opposed to the audience we're trying to cater to. And I think we need to think more about that goes in the restaurant industry. Yeah, that's great that we want to, show that we own a restaurant and all these great things. Well done. But it's about the customers. It's about you. I think that's why user generated content is so powerful, that you leverage that. But another thing that restaurants aren't doing enough of, and sorry for calling out the industry tonight, but you're not doing enough user generated content out there. You need to do that more and more. I think that's the future. I think more, and that doesn't even just include the restaurant industry. I think that's all industry, is getting other people to talk about yourself online or social, wherever the case is. But even to a point where, like, we get a lot of shows on here, a lot of restaurants on here, we just want to promote them. We want to promote more and more about them, not telling them how to run their business or having yourself on here to tell them what they can do to help their businesses. That's the key. But I think, my point is I think there's a lot of opportunity to grow in this area. But the other thing I want to mention too is sticking to what you're familiar with. Reminds me of my AM show tomorrow, Dominic. On my AM marketing show, I talk about marketing for 45 minutes, and I'm actually getting ready for my work day. So I'm doing a 45-minute prep for my work day in marketing. So I think the thing also, what it does is when you focus on those areas that you're good at, it makes you try to be better at that subject, right? So when I'm looking at what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, I'm already prepping that in my whole mind through the weekend, going, okay, we're going to talk about this. Maybe I'll read about this or learn about this. I think the same goes no matter if you're cutting onions or if you're making a dish, you're going to practice. So when you produce that content, even if it is, like you said, a little rough or whatever the case is, at least you've practiced it. You know what you're talking about. You're prepping for it. But I think we need to do more of that. I think you nailed it, when we need to do what we're really good at, but make frequency of that content or what we're producing more and more. Lastly, before we wrap up here, is can you give us at least a couple of those reasons why you're being ignored in a boardroom? Dominic gets ignored all the time.
Yeah.
I love your book is Nobody Effing Listens.
Nobody effing listens.
I have that tattooed on my back, just so you know.
Well, that's brand recognition right there, right?
It's on my back.
Well, only when you're at the beach, I guess. That's the
Yeah, exactly.
So Nobody Effing Listens, 6 Reasons Why You're Being Ignored in the Boardroom. It's a recent book. I've only just launched it June 2024. This came out. And the reason I wrote that is because one of the things that I was ever conscious of, or have been ever conscious of for a very long time, is that even though you go into any form of presentation or any form of communication where you're trying to get somebody to either listen and then do something for you. So in a sales context, that might be, I'm going to present something to a board and they're going to hopefully make a decision to buy something from me. But it goes right down to the whole attention idea. Is like, if I want somebody to listen to me, what am I actually asking them to do? It's not just listen, right? It might be to learn something. It might be to take action. It might be to come into my restaurant. It might be to buy a voucher. It might be a whole bunch of things that you want them to do. And so what I've done is, I've really thought about the psychology and done a lot of study around the psychology of actually why people both listen or don't listen, and then why they take action. And the problem is, we think it's a one in and done kind of environment where you say something and people go do something, but that's not really true, right? Decision making in general is a process. And so I don't just buy something. Typically, for most people, and particularly in a business context, you don't generally make a decision on a whim. You make a decision based on a number of factors that allow you to make that particular decision. And so the 6 things in there, and I've turned it into a mnemonic for people to remember. It's called IMPART. And IMPART stands for I for identification, right? So you must be talking to the right audience. And you can use this in context to your social media and the stuff we've been talking about too, right? So speak to your audience. Make sure you understand intimately who your audience is and speak to that kind of person. And try and narrow it down to an individual or a couple of types of people that you want to speak to. Because the more natural that becomes, the more it's like somebody goes, yeah, that's me they're speaking to, right? So when imagine this from the other side. Yes, you're speaking to me because you understand me. Great. So you've identified the right person. M stands for motivation. What is the motivation for them to keep listening or to actually listen? Now, in a business context, it's often a problem that you're trying to solve, right? This thing is not working. I'm here to sell you something that will fix that thing, right? So the motivation must be of relevance. So firstly, I must have that motivation as the audience. I must have that motivation. And secondly, it must be on my priority list to get it resolved. Because if it's not, you know yourself, right? You run a business, there's 1,000 things I need to be doing, and 997 of them can probably wait, but there are 3 things that I've got to do today. Yeah. Right. 3 really important things. So there's always a long list of, I'd like to get done. There's only a few that ever sit on your priority list. So make sure the motivation is there and it's high enough. And if that's true, I'll continue to listen. Now that I'm listening to you because you said you're speaking to me and I've got the motivation, then I'm going to ask the question in my mind, what can you do for me? Right? So P stands for plan. So here's the plan that I have for you, and it should be quite simple, but also really strong in its. So simple doesn't mean easy necessarily, but it means that you actually really understand what the problem is and you know how to solve it. So what is the plan for you to fix the problem I have? Once you've done that, A stands for action. So now that I know what you're going to do for me, what is it that you need from me? What are the actions you want me to take? Because this is a two-way thing, right? Rarely does something happen in isolation without my input. So if you say to me, I'm going to help you fix this thing, but by the way, that's going to take 50 hours of your time every week for the next 6 weeks, it's never going to happen, right? So the actions you want to give the person that you're asking to take action needs to be simple, logical, and not too invasive. I'm still listening, right? But now I'm thinking, yeah, but if I make that decision, what are the risks involved in taking the next step? So R stands for risks. What are those next steps that you're taking? Some are really obvious, right? So you're going to jump off this cliff. You're probably going to die if you don't have a parachute, right? So some are really obvious. But the ones that are more powerful are the ones that are under the surface, right? Think about all the things that might be affecting this decision-making process. And for somebody in the business, it might be, yeah, but if I allocate the budget for that, I'm not going to have budget over here. Or if I make that decision, is that going to affect my role? If I make that decision, is that going to make me redundant because I'm no longer needed? Think about all the objections that I might have. And then finally, finish me off with, what's the transformation that I'm going to get out of taking this process with you? What have I bought in? Where am I going to end up? And it needs to feel like I'm actually going to be in a better place, right? So if I'm going to make this decision with you and you're going to get me to do all these things and you've ticked you've eliminated all the risks, where am I going to end up? So in part again, identify, motivation, plan, action, risks, and transformation. And if you can keep me engaged through each one of those steps in process, in that order, by the way, and so that I won't both forget what I'm having to impart is knowledge, pardon the pun, but what am I trying to get you to do? But I won't forget, and each one of those steps is just as important as the next one to keep me engaged. If you can nail all of those impart steps, there's a good chance they're going to make a decision. Might not always go perfect, but it will work.
That's good. That's good advice.
Yeah, it's
well,
really good.
Jewels, honestly, that's really good because I think a lot of the times I call Dominic when I get into the third step there, but it is, I call Dom, I got to get a coaching opportunity, but I think more and more that people need to think about those processes when they're in those meetings or in those boardrooms on that process map, because you get stuck, or you say the wrong things, or you don't think about the repercussions or the risks. Sometimes you just say stuff and you don't go through those processes when you're saying it. So it does put you sometimes in a pickle, but I think also sometimes you're not taken maybe seriously, or people are overlooking what you're talking about, or not listening. I think listening is a key part as well, right? But yeah, I want to, we got to wrap up here, but I want to thank you so much, Jewels, all the way from Australia. I just want to, whereabouts in Australia are you?
Sydney, Australia.
Sydney? Look at that, Dominic. You're our first Sydney guest.
There we
go.
I
want to thank you for taking the time. I know it's lunchtime probably now there, and I just want to thank you for, honestly, I'm going to grab your book. They can grab it on Amazon, it looks like, and it sounds awesome. And just want to thank you for your time and to really share all this wisdom. Yeah, it's been outstanding. So all the best.
You're absolutely welcome. And I've had a ball. I've had a ball, and you guys are a lot of fun. So keep up the good work. Keep what you're doing.
Thanks, we'll keep consistent. Thank you so much, Jewels. There you go, Dominic.
Well, I think we're going to hire Jewels, Jay.
I think we're going to hire him. I got that down on my notes too. Hire Jewels.
Hire Jewels.
Right? Isn't that good though? His advice is solid. It's solid.
Yeah, I think probably everything in everything we do, we don't stop for a minute because we're so busy. We're so tied up with the day-to-day fires that we have to put out and all the different things, is that sometimes if we took a few minutes and thought, hey, can hiring somebody like Jewels or putting some of his suggestions into play, will they help make my life easier? And it's usually yes. It's like putting in a piece of software or looking at different suppliers or looking at your menu. We're so bogged down with the day-to-day that we don't step back and look at our operation, our menu, whatever it is. And I think probably almost always when we step back and really take a critical look at anything we're doing, we can find a way to improve it. None of us are running at 100%. Not even close.
No, right? Not even close. And I think there's opportunity. Even if we dialed up a little bit, even if we dialed up a little bit and we took those things. Well, I think that also, when I always reflect on what we've been doing with our show here, is that we've been going a long time. Like we've been doing this since December. I think it was December. We've been doing shows now since June. It's over a year, by the way, that we've been doing shows together, and we're just consistent. Keep going. We got another. If you see my map here, we have a few more shows coming up. But it is where we're keeping consistent. By no means are we perfect. People know that when our shows are. But we love promoting the industry, love talking about the industry, and we love having guests like Jewels on tonight that really get it. Like, I'm serious. Sometimes these guests are so good that it just blows my mind that we get the opportunity to spend with them, especially in Australia, Sydney. That's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And you didn't make me laugh. You didn't make me laugh enough either.
I'm sorry, Jay. I'll work harder at that. I think, again, everybody, get out there, start. It was slow and hard for me to start with the Safe Check podcast. And I've fallen many a time with ours, but we got to just get back on the horse and keep it.
It's good. It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
There's lots of people to talk to in our little industry. On the training side, we primarily deal with food service, but we have all sorts of industries, and we've had some different people on the Safe Check podcast that are
great people.
That it isn't just about food safety. So back to the restaurant industry, food service, even if you're just catering, again, people want to know. People want to know, how does this get made? How do you serve 600 people, right? How do you do it?
Here's the thing is, they made TV for how many 100 years? TV. Doing stuff like that now with the opportunity to do this out there, I think where people are more interested in what we see on TV. A lot, if social media tells us that's true, I think more and more that we just got to do it. I think it just comes down to it. Also, I think also it's, what do you want? You have to first sit back and really, what do you want? And I think building your brand today, and I've said this 1,000 times to you, building your brand today is so significant. It may not be this moment in time, especially in the Canadian market, but when we look in the US market, maybe it's different in Australia, but when we look at the importance that we know in UK it is, building your self brand is massive. And it's
everywhere, Jay. It's not just those countries even.
I know, but I think they're a little bit more advanced. I think they're a little more advanced. For sure. They're getting there. But
we're slow to catch on, 100%.
Yeah.
We're slow.
But we always relate to the party, but we're loud when we get there. But it is the point that I think we have to look at this. We have to understand it. And when I get into the marketing talk, so tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, I'm doing a 30-minute, not 45, 30-minute, I get it ready for work, 30-minute marketing talk. And I'll talk about this stuff. I'm going to talk about the idea around having a restaurant podcast and being able to develop that more, flesh that idea out. But I think we need to just look at what do you want to get out of your brand? Do you want to tell your story? Do you want to develop your brand? You may not know. I don't think sometimes people know what's going to do either. We didn't know that we didn't know what our podcast, we didn't know it was going to last. We didn't know what it was going to be. Sometimes I don't think you really know. And I think that's the best is,
you're right. I think that's the good part about it. I think that's the cool part of it.
You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know.
No,
you don't know if the National Wrestling Association is going to call you up. You don't know if all these people are going to call you. And you just don't know. I think the part is, if you want to tell stories, if you want to build your brand, if you want to create marketing content that resonates with people today, this stuff is fun. And I think it's like, I always goes back to my dad.
Than you think, yeah.
Yeah, I go back to my dad. Man, he would have been he would have been Joe Rogan, because he was a professional storyteller. And that's all he did, like just stories. It was always, and I don't know if 90, they always say like 90% weren't true, but he was a professional storyteller. So I think when you look at it today, it's an opportunity for businesses to build and resonate with people. And Jewels said it best. And I love that talk today. It was really good. Pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
We didn't
pound.
ask him about, yeah. Okay, cool.
We didn't ask him about what?
I'm not going to say it. Doesn't matter.
Oh, you wanted me to say put another shrimp on the Barbie?
Why didn't you say that? You should ask them that. What? Why is that? Why is that a famous?
Why is that? You're going to ask him? Google it. I'm sure it's probably an insult.
But it just I don't think it's an
he
insult.
Probably gets asked it probably every time.
No.
It's not. That those good old Canadians can't get
that. The cool thing is, I think Australians are much
probably like us saying
Canadians.
story.
Yeah.
They're what?
Sorry about that. Yeah. Australians are much like Canadians, Jay.
They are. Anyways, that was a great show. All the best.
Thanks a lot.
You know, we have a big week coming up in too, so you make sure you eat your Wheaties.
I'm going to eat my Wheaties. Most people will not understand that reference, just so you know.
Hey, have a good night. Here we go.